Hello again, everyone. Welcome back. This is the weekend market update for the week ending Friday, November 28th. All right, we're going to start off here and just briefly touch my ETF dashboard. When you look at the index ETFs up here, the strongest mover was the Russell 2000 IWM, up 5.6%. Everything was positive. Look over here. When I look at the sectors, there's 16 sectors that I track in here. All 16 were positive. Last week, it was a little less than 50-50. All 16 were positive, and for the year to date, everything is positive now when you look at this column. A couple of these have been bouncing between negative and positive and negative positive, but as of this week, everything is in the positive category. So kind of interesting, very strong, bullish type move here, a surge here for the Thanksgiving holiday week. So we'll see. The strongest mover, the strongest sector, boy, semiconductors, 8%. They continue to lead on the year by far, way out ahead of anybody else. Retail had a good week, though, 5.5%, and home construction got a pretty good bounce. We'll see whether or not that's going to last. And then when I scan down here, the other one that really jumps out at me is SLV, silver, 13.05% for the week, up 94.5% on the year. So it's very close to having doubled on the year. Look how bad oil's still down 18.5% on the year. But everything was positive this week. So we're going to dive in here. I want to take a look at the indices real quick. Let's take a look. I want to start off with the side-by-side view. So the Dow Industrials, strong week, up, I'm looking for the number, 1471, up 1471. The interesting thing is, look where it closed. It closed at a new all-time high in terms of a closing high on a weekly basis. It's sitting at the highest level it's ever sat at the end of a week on the Dow Industrials, at 47,716. Same thing over here with the SPX. It was up 246, 68.4909 is where we closed. This week right here, we closed 68.40. So we're sitting at a new closing weekly all-time high on the S&P 500. Not quite the same on the NASDAQ 100, up 1,195 points. But it did close above the prior week high, just like the SPX did and just like the Dow Industrials did. So we'll see whether this is just part of a counter trend bounce coming off of, a 3-week move to the downside, corrective move, or is this the start of another push to the upside here for December? Let's see, I wanted to show you real quick the monthly view. So here's the Dow Industrials for the month of November, because, Friday was the last day of trading. Monday starts December. Up 153 points for the month. Little doji type candle. That's all we got in the end for the month of November on the Dow Industrials. And when we look at the SPX, similar kind of picture, little doji type candle, up 8.89 at the end of the month. But it had been quite a bit lower at one point. And when we take a look over here, I gotta get it somewhere else. Gotta go right here. Down 423.24 on the NASDAQ 100. So just kind of hanging there. That may be a hanging man type of pattern for the month. I don't know. We'll see. Okay, so let's go back over here to the home page. Let's take a look at the Dow Diamonds. And I'm going to look at the daily and weekly. So on Friday, up 283. Again, it was a half-day session, right? So holiday short, we had 3.5 days of trading this week. So up 1461, like we just showed you on the industrials. But what I'm looking at on the Elliott Wave picture is I've been holding this to say my primary, and I'm still going to hold this as my primary count, that minor wave 5, minute wave 5 right here, this little wave, and minor 5 are done and intermediate wave 3 is complete. That's my primary count. But this move that's happened here over the last week, and actually it started on the Friday, a week ago Friday on the 21st, pretty strong move. So it's giving me pause. So it makes me think maybe this third Manu wave didn't really end until the 29th, and that we had an expanded flat for a wave 4 that ended at the low here, and that we're pushing for one more push up before we complete minor 5 and intermediate wave 3. We'll see what we get. We'll see what kind of wave count we get. We'll see how the price action is. But I've got the same kind of thoughts on the other two that I'm going to talk about, the SPY and the Qs. Up 371 on the SPY, up 24.36 on the weekly. Okay, so it's a similar kind of thing, same kind of picture that I'm looking at. It could very well be that the 29th was the high of Manu Wave 3, and that we got this corrective pattern here that came down. You see how low it corrected on the RSI, much lower than anything else. It could, it could also be the start of the intermediate wave 4. But then what I'm looking for on an intermediate wave 4 is you never know which, you're looking for. Is it 3 waves? Is it 5 waves? This has been really funky. We're not getting a clear impulsive wave move down. Are we getting some kind of 3 wave count? It's really, really hard to tell if you don't say that the little corrective pattern ended here. So, you really got to give this some consideration to say we've got maybe another push going on. So we'll see how the next couple of weeks play out. And we got a Fed meeting coming up in a couple of weeks. And then the last one let's take a look at is the Qs. Up 498. Again, all of these have been up 5 days in a row. Up 29.18 on the Qs. Say, just like the NDX that we showed. And the Elliott Wave picture that I've got is the same thing. I'm looking for the end of this 5th wave. I'm calling it at the high here on the 29th. But we'll see how this price action plays out. We continue to push higher, and it starts becoming very strong. It kind of did here recently. The breadth was very strong this week. Then you got to sit back and say, okay, maybe something else going on here. And so that's my alternate count that says, Manu Wave 3, Manu Wave 4, and then off for trying to finish this third intermediate wave. Okay, quick look at a couple of indicators. Let's just look at, where are we? I lost it. Okay, technicals, VIX. So the VIX basically cratered. So with all the indices going up for 5 straight days, the VIX did just the opposite, down 5 straight days, 4 days in a row below the 10-day moving average. Literally, the low on Friday got all the way down to almost to the lows that we occurred here near the end of October. So pretty major collapse in the VIX, kind of in sync with what we're seeing on the indices in the opposite direction. Now the McClellan oscillator. Let me go back up here. I need to open it up. Okay, the McClellan oscillator is sitting at a plus 147.46. Now, what I was talking about with the breadth, this is the New York Stock Exchange advancing and declining issues. So Monday, on the high end of neutral, I color-coded dark green when it gets 67% or higher, and red when it's 33% or lower. Okay, so 2 out of the 4 days were a dark green, solid on the advancing issues. 3 out of the 4 days were very strong in terms of advancing volume as a total of the volume. Now, granted, Friday was pretty light volume. The advancing volume was there. It was, maybe 55% or so of the total that occurred on Wednesday. So, a lot less volume going on. Okay, so let's take a look at McClellan oscillator. So the interesting thing about that reading I just told you, which is right here, if I can get this to cooperate, there we go, plus 147. Look how we've jumped above all of this. And it kind of looks like, you know, I hate to, talk too much about a head and shoulders pattern, but it's like we just broke above all of this back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Now, I know we got fairly well oversold a couple of times. What happened to it? Disappeared on me. There we go. Down here, minus 185, minus 196. But this is pretty strong push, so it's reflective. And, we'll just see where this goes and see what this continues to tell us. But right now, it's pretty indicative of the surge that's happening. Let's take a quick look at silver, SLV. This surprised me a little bit. Okay, so I really was looking for a lot more corrective move before it went higher. I was looking for a higher move. I didn't think the three-wave impulse was done. But when you look just purely on a price action, this looks like a little cup and handle kind of move here in terms of what it did. And so if this plays out, I think this projects up to maybe about 56 short term. We'll see. Now, when I look at the Elliott Wave picture, here's what I'd been looking at. And I said, well, I don't think the 5-wave move of minor 3 and definitely intermediate wave 3 is not done. I think there's much more to go to the upside. But in trying to figure out the 5 waves here of Manu wave 3, I just felt like we had more corrective action going on. Like we had a 3-wave and a 3-wave, and I thought, okay, we're going to get a flat and get a pullback in here maybe. We'll see. And then we get this burst. So I'm a little bit skeptical of this, but it's a pretty strong little move, and maybe I've got intermediate wave, minuet level wave 2 wrong. Maybe it was a flat. Maybe wave 1 ended like right in here, possibly like that. And then maybe wave 4 ended like this. That's not normally what I'd look for in a wave 4, but you never know. I mean, the market's going to do what the market's going to do. So right now, we'll just continue to watch to see, is this a real move, real breakout, or is it a fake out? We'll see. But, I am, the net out is, I definitely think there's much more to go on SLV and silver. Okay, that's it for today, for this weekend. Everyone have a great rest of the weekend, and hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving, and we'll talk to you on the next video.